once you completed the physical autopsy of Chloe, what was the cause of death physically for Chloe?
Strangulation.
Even the best moms in the world have their moments.
And I didn't have any moments. I didn't even physically touch my daughter that day.
This was a highly coercive interrogation, the kind of which that could lead both to a guilty person providing a true confession or an innocent person providing a false confession.
It is the intense back and forth of the Kelsie Thomas trial, the mother accused of killing her own young daughter. We're going to go through the evidence, the arguments, and the perhaps unexpected ending to this story. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. We're continuing our recaps of trials you might have missed, ones that we covered on the Law and Crime Network. And our next one takes us back to 2020 out in Iowa, where 23-year-old Kelsie Thomas was charged with the murder and child endangerment of her 5-year-old daughter, Cloe Chandler. Back in July of 2018, Chloe was found dead in the family's home, and this became a question of how did she die? One theory put forward by prosecutors was that Thomas used this little girl's pajama pants to strangle her to death. As for the other theory, I'm going to allow the defense to present that. But we want to start off with the prosecution's opening statement back on March 4th, 2020, that lays out more details. And also, as you're going to hear from prosecutor Ruben Neff, this is not an easy case to sit through.
I'd also like to take this time to apologize. And by that, I simply mean many of you have lived normal lives. You do not see what pretty much everyone else that works in this courtroom tends to see on a daily basis. We're going to have to look at very difficult evidence, hear testimony on difficult topics. You will have to see medical examiner autopsy photos throughout this trial. And just keep in mind, you will see lots of very difficult images. If you need a break at any time, it is perfectly allowable for you to ask for that break. Because this whole trial will revolve around one particular act. And that is, through all the evidence that we intend to present to you through this trial, we expect to prove that the last moments Cloe Chandler experienced on this earth were watching her own mother strangle her. We intend to prove to you through our evidence that on July 19th, 2018, Cloe Chandler, granddaughter of Callie Cookett, second cousin of Brittany Johnson, and sister of her baby brother Phoenix, was killed by her mother, the defendant, Kelsie Thomas. You'll hear testimony of how law enforcement and firefighters arrived on scene around 3:30, 3:40 on that day. You'll hear testimony from Corey Binge from the Tumble Fire Department. I believe he's the chief deputy firefighter. He'll testify to you how he was the first on scene and came into the home, went into Chloe's room, and found her lifeless. He'll testify to you how he found her body cold to the touch, how he tried to resuscitate her and could not get essentially a life reading, how he found her airway was blocked by vomit. You'll learn that Kelsie had Chloe when she was 16 from a guy who cheated on her, left her. And more importantly, you'll learn from Callie how Kelsie met a new man, Aaron Thomas. They married, they had another child, Phoenix. And how Callie describes Kelsie behaving around Cloe after Phoenix is born will be incredibly important, because we expect that you'll learn the context of this relationship, how Kelsie grew distant from Cloe, became more irritated with Cloe, and how Kelsie asked Callie on prior occasions if she would take Cloe.
And that idea of Kelsie Thomas maybe needing help or being overwhelmed or frustrated or being angry at her situation, we're going to explore that in a little bit. But I should also tell you the prosecution suggested that Kelsie Thomas confessed, that she confessed to killing Cloe in her interview with police. Now the defense, moving over to them, as I said, they have an alternative theory as to what happened to Cloe, and they also have an explanation for anything Kelsie may have said to law enforcement.
Ladies and gentlemen, on July 19, 2018, Cloe Chandler tragically died by an accidental ending. The state will not be able to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that it happened any other way. And because of that, at the close of all the evidence, not just the state's evidence, but all the evidence, I'll get back up here and I'll ask you to return a verdict of not guilty. False confessions are a real life thing. And in this case, you folks are going to hear from Dr. Brian Cutler, who is an expert on interrogation and false confessions. Brian Cutler is going to tell you about how he reviewed the interrogation of Kelsie Thomas. He's going to tell you about the many known risk factors for false confession that existed during that interrogation. Dr. Cutler will testify that while he can't tell you if Kelsie Thomas is telling the truth, because nobody can tell you if Kelsie Thomas was actually telling the truth, he'll testify that in his expert opinion, that interrogation created an environment which would encourage both an innocent and guilty person to confess.
So the defense's positioning was this was an accidental hanging, that Cloe, in an effort to create a swing, accidentally killed herself, that Kelsie Thomas discovered her daughter in this situation, that she was coerced into providing a false confession to police. That's what happened. You know what's difficult? You know what's tough? Reading through legal briefs and filings to prepare for Sidebar. It's like I'm back in law school. Being told I look like Dennis Reynolds every single time I check the comments. That wears on you. At this point, I think people think he hosts the show. Again, it's tough. But you know what's not difficult? Starting a claim with Morgan & Morgan. How about that transition, by the way? Well, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm, they make the process as easy as possible for their clients, because from starting your claim to uploading documents to talking to your legal team, it can all be done from your smartphone. There's no upfront fee. You only pay them if you win. And speaking winning, Morgan & Morgan, they have a track record of securing verdicts and settlements in the multi-millions. So if you're injured, this may be the firm you want in your corner. You can easily start a claim at forthepeople.com/LC Sidebar. Now let's get into this. So the prosecution presented witnesses to establish the struggles that Thomas was facing and some tension between her and Cloe, and also some odd comments that were attributed to Kelsie Thomas, and that included testimony from Thomas's own mother.
Did you ever have any conversations with Kelsie about Cloe?
Yes.
What kind of things did you talk about relating to Cloe?
She would be having a hard time getting Cloe to listen, and I just told her to try to spend as much time as she could with her.
And why did you tell her that?
Because I thought maybe if she spent more time with her and paid more attention with her, that she would stop being a brat.
Did you ever have a conversation with Kelsie specifically about Cloe coming to live with you?
Yes.
What did Kelsie ask you during that conversation or say to you?
She pretty much told me to take Cloe.
Now, on July 19th, 2018, did you find out about Chloe's death?
Yes.
How did you find out about Chloe's death?
One of Kelsie's ex-boyfriends called me.
Around what time was it that you got a call about Chloe, from that boyfriend? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it was a little after 8 o'clock.
On that day, did Kelsie try to reach out to you in any way?
No.
What did you do after you talked to that boyfriend, or ex-boyfriend, I apologize?
I called Kelsie.
And around what time was it that you called Kelsie?
It would have been between 8 and 8:30.
What, if anything, did Kelsie say?
I asked her what she was doing, and she said she was eating. And I said, "How's Chloe?" And she said, "How did you find out?"
And that was her response when you asked about Chloe?
Yes.
So if we accept that as true, very strange response, right? Is that because she killed her daughter that she reacted that way? And then there was Brittany Johnson, Thomas's cousin, who didn't believe that Chloe's death was just an accident and agreed to work with police. Listen to her interaction with Thomas.
Did you and Kelsie talk about Chloe and her behavior prior to her death?
Yes.
And what did Kelsie tell you?
She explained things that were odd, that Chloe reminded her of her father, that she would get out of hand, that she would make her upset, things that a grieving mother wouldn't normally, in my opinion, express. She said that she must have accidentally hung herself, and she proceeded to explain how she thought it happened. But during that time, I had asked to enter the residence once we had parked, and she told me that she wouldn't go back in because she had just watched her daughter die.
And then did she then, after she said that, then say, well, not really die, but I found her?
She did. She corrected herself.
Did you, during that conversation, did you talk about the fact that the police were investigating what had happened?
I did.
And what, if anything, did Kelsie say regarding that?
That she thought she was going to be okay.
Did she give you any indication about whether or not she was happy that the police were investigating what happened?
No, she was not happy that the police were investigating what was happening.
Did she specifically talk to you about whether or not Chloe had ever done anything like this before, like tied anything around her neck or say anything regarding that?
I do not believe so.
Now I want to get into arguably the heart of this case, medical testimony. Look, forensic pathologists, medical examiners, they're always important players in any case, of course, but sometimes we already know how someone died. It's not the central question. Their testimony becomes more perfunctory. Prosecution has to establish, yes, that someone died and how they died, and yes, you need to call the medical examiner, but here, in a case when we're trying to establish how a 5-year-old died like this, strangulation or accident, the medical examiner, this testimony becomes so important. So with that, let's hear what Dr. Michelle Catalier had to say.
Cloe Chandler, once you completed the physical autopsy of Chloe, what was the cause of death physically for Chloe?
Strangulation.
Can you walk us through, when you say strangulation, what it means for forensic pathologists to know that?
Well, strangulation is a broad term. We specifically think of it as having injury caused by something constricting the neck, but it can be due to hanging, a suspension type strangulation with a ligature. It can be due to a ligature strangulation caused by forces other than gravity and body weight, such as pulling or pushing on the neck, often with a tool. It can be manual strangulation, as when someone uses their hands. And then there are other kinds that are even less common, like compression with the arm and the elbow used to make what's often called a chokehold.
What physical evidence of strangulation did you find on Chloe?
Well, first of all, there was a ligature furrow. A furrow is what we call a patterned injury that's on the neck in terms of strangulation, and that reflects the presence of an object that caused constriction of the neck, most often some kind of ligature. That is actually an abrasion, often combined with a contusion, and sometimes just pressure marks. There's also kind of a peculiar outline of 3 parallel marks that are at the top and center toward her right. And those are faintly outlined, which would support a pressure in the middle with the blood pushed out to the sides. And there are also some little abrasions or scratches in the middle of those areas. Those may represent, well, they are patterned injuries, which would suggest an object caused them. And they are suggestive of fingers that may have been under that ligature or adjacent to and under the ligature, with the abrasions being consistent with nail marks.
I want you to keep those findings in mind when we get to the defense's case, because they present their own expert. Okay, but now I want to focus on another key piece of evidence in this case, something that I mentioned before. Thomas's police interrogation. This is key. So the idea is that she changed her story, and the defense will say she was coerced into providing false information. So you have 2 different perspectives here. First, she denies, she denies, she denies. She claims she found Chloe in the closet with pajama pants tied to her neck, that Chloe wanted to make a swing in the closet with the pants, and this little girl accidentally strangled herself, hung herself. And the key, the big key here from Kelsie Thomas, and what she reiterates, as you see, is that she is not responsible. She didn't do this.
I said, you want to show the evidence, but you're not, and we know that. Kelsie, again, the medical exam, and they're telling us this is clearly murder.
Sure.
Your family is calling us, telling us that you absolutely did this. I'm not bullshitting you. Your family are the ones that called us and told us,
What family?
this is not right. This
What
did
family?
not happen.
Honestly, what family?
2 to 3 plus people. Close family.
I don't have close family.
Affinity-wise, close.
Honestly.
We're not talking about 10 cousins down the line. We're talking about people who know you and know your daughter.
I don't even talk to half my family. The only person that's normally in my house other than me and my husband is my grandma.
Kelsie, just to reiterate, we agreed yesterday, this is not accidental on Chloe's part, right?
I am so tired of being accused. I loved my daughter.
I'm not saying it didn't. No,
Sure seems that way.
Listen, at any point in this conversation, or yesterday's conversation, did anybody say, Kelsie, you did not love Chloe?
You wouldn't be accusing me.
Listen, what else did we tell you though? Even the best moms in the world have their moments.
And I didn't have any moment.
We talked yesterday.
I didn't even physically touch my daughter that day.
We talked yesterday about the picture that the media is painted, and it's not a good one. You know that, but we can agree on that, right?
I'm not agreeing to killing my daughter.
I'm not saying that. I'm simply saying.
You guys are getting me to, you're trying to get me to agree to something that I didn't do.
Kelsie, we want the truth.
I am telling you the truth.
You can sit here and deny the facts that happened, right? But I can tell you. Again, this all goes back to what do you want to be seen as? Do you want to be seen as the mom who had a lot of reasons why things went bad, you didn't have support, something went bad, and in a split second something went wrong? Kelsie, you haven't shown an ounce of emotion in the 10 plus hours we've spent. I think people are going to see that.
I did a lot of crying when I found her.
And I understand that, and I'm not denying you did. But that can also be attributed to the traumatic event that you witnessed, that you were a part of.
No.
Listen.
Oh my God. You guys are literally pissing me off.
Kelsie, explanation is the truth.
No.
And that's why it's hard to talk
I
about.
am telling
There is
you
no
the
reason.
freaking truth.
Maybe there was no reason for her to die other than you wanted her gone.
No.
We don't want to believe this was just straight cold-blooded murder, that it was a scheme that you put in place, but that's what it looks like.
I didn't kill her, for Christ's sakes.
Kelsie, we're spending the time with you so we can have those answers. These are the questions everyone else is going to have. How about us tell that story? I understand you have to be hurting on this. I get that, Kelsie.
Do you?
Oh, that's right that. I don't know. Maybe it is just relief. Maybe this is the first break you've had now that she's gone.
Oh my God, you're just sick.
Kelsie, when people watch the interviews we've had with you, and you can sit here and not, this is the first shed of emotion that you've shown is being pissed just because we won't let you get by with saying you didn't kill your daughter.
What proof do you have that I killed my daughter? Honestly.
I told you.
You gotta show me anything.
Do you want to see dead pictures of your daughter?
No, not really, because I'm supposed to be going to see her here soon. No, I loved my daughter. I would never think of anything about killing her.
You're saying you're premeditated, so we don't think you thought this out for months and months. We're trying to go with a reasonable idea that something just freaking went wrong, but you keep telling us, nope, it wasn't this, it wasn't that, it wasn't.
Because nothing happened.
And we keep questioning something happened.
I'm so tired of hearing you say that.
Chloe's dead.
I understand. I found her.
Something happened.
I'm aware that she is
put
gone.
herself in that position. How can you even say that? You understand she could not have done this to herself. There is no other explanation, Kelsie. The only explanation is you're the explanation. Did you do something to throw her in her room? Thought she'd be okay, and then when you woke up, she was dead?
No.
And then you had to put her in the closet or come up with that story because you were worried?
When I found her, she was in the closet.
And what happened before?
Nothing. I didn't put her in her closet. I didn't kill her.
Did you drag her to her room? Did you put something around her throat?
No.
In her room and say stay in there?
No.
Did you have to beat her bottom because she came out?
No. The only time that I touched the back of her neck was when I lifted her up.
You're doubting the fact that she was...
Because you guys are in my head.
As many times as you have told us and stuck to your story that you did not kill your daughter.
I didn't kill my daughter. No, I didn't.
You're not going to slip up on the fact of whether I believe she was hanging in there. So your daughter wasn't hanging in the closet.
I found her hanging in the closet. Why are you guys trying to put words in my mouth? Okay, I'm still stressed out.
Okay, with that right there. So I asked you how... I don't know. We asked you how you killed your daughter. I don't know.
I didn't kill my daughter. Do you enjoy sitting there with the smirk on your face? Honestly.
Kelsie, I don't know what you think the smirk is. I don't have a smirk on my face. No, I don't enjoy having this conversation with you. I really prefer Chloe living alive because this whole situation has taken me away from a lot of things, other things in my life that I'd like to be doing. But your daughter's dead, and we know you did it.
No, I didn't.
It gets tense, as you can see, and police, they don't let up. And then the story from Kelsie Thomas ends up changing. It went from everything was okay with Chloe to this expression of frustration at her daughter. And that the story shifted from Chloe being in the closet to something happening in the bed.
When I dropped Phoenix out of her room, and I turned around and told her that if she would stay in bed, that I was going to be her.
Stay down in your bed. Chloe, stay. Stay. Don't get up on each other. She was wiggling around. She wanted to get out of bed. You didn't have it. And that makes sense because I would be the same way. If I did something and I was too aggressive, maybe I could go to sleep and wake up and maybe she was okay. Maybe I just knocked her out. Maybe I was just a little aggressive when she passed out. When I go to bed, when I sleep, when I wake up, she'll be fine. And she wasn't. That's a story that Kelsie. That's a mother that's just frustrated. I get that. That's
I'm frustrated every day. You know, she jumped in her bed, and as I was coming, I came into the room, and she had jumped out of her bed, and I tried to grab her arm, and she slipped out of my arm, and she ran out of her bedroom. I grabbed the pants, and I just went like this, and I pulled.
Where was she at?
She was in the room. She was, I mean, like I said, I tried to grab her arm, which stopped her, and then she turned, and got my arm out, or got her arm out of my hand. So I grabbed the pants, and I flung them over her, and then when I pulled, I don't know, honestly, if I twisted, or, you know, I know she had turned around. I stepped forward to put the pants, and I tried to get her. And then I put the pants, as I was stepping back, I was moving her. I lifted her.
And then you lifted her off the ground. Is that when she spun around to the side, kind of? Or was that when
That was when I was pulling her.
And prosecutors say Kelsie Thomas admitted to police that she killed her daughter, essentially in a fit of anger, which arguably matches up to the physical evidence presented by the prosecution. Hey, so I'm going to take a guess and say that a lot of you who watch Sidebar might be business owners, maybe even thinking of starting a little side hustle. Well, if that's the case, I want to talk to you about our amazing sponsor, Odoo. So Odoo is a free all-in-one business management software that provides you with a range of applications that helps with the day-to-day of owning a business. Now, as some of you might know, I'm the host and executive producer of a very popular YouTube show called Prime Crime. It's on our Law&Crime page. So this is like managing a business, and I want you to watch this. Say if we ever charge for Prime Crime, and to be clear, we have no plans to do that, so don't worry, I could seamlessly and for free build a Prime Crime website with Odoo and put a built-in checkout page on the website with very little effort. Monthly subscriptions, it's even easier. Look how easy that was. 5 minutes later, I now have primecrime.com. So thank you to Odoo for sponsoring Sidebar, and thank you for getting me a Prime Crime website. You can build your website now. Domain is free for the first year when you use our link odoo.com/LC Sidebar. Prosecutors also suggested that Ms. Thomas wrote a letter to her family apologizing.
Sir, providing you with the marks as State's Exhibit 84, if you could read that for the jury.
State's family, I just want to say how terribly sorry I am right now. I love Chloe so much and never thought anything like this would ever happen. I just wish more of you would have helped me when I asked or tried to get me the help we all know I needed. Please keep her memories alive. Let Phoenix know I love him and that I'm very sorry this happened. I'm sorry I lied to everyone. I was so scared of what I did and what would happen. I don't blame you guys if you never forgive me. I wouldn't either. Love you all so much, Kelsie.
So a pretty strong prosecution case, right? Well, the defense had their turn. They presented a case too. And they picked apart a lot of what the prosecution presented. And I want to start with that confession, because the defense called Dr. Brian Cutler a false confession expert. Here was his take.
So were you able to come to an opinion about the interrogation that was conducted on Kelsie Thomas?
Yes.
And what is your opinion?
The opinion that this was a highly coercive interrogation, the kind of which that could lead both to a guilty person providing a true confession or an innocent person providing a false confession.
Dr. Cutler, if in this case, ultimately Kelsie Thomas was presented by investigators with two options. One is she's a monster who would just kill her daughter premeditatedly, or she is the overburdened mom who just snapped. Is that a minimization tactic that was employed there?
It's in part a minimization tactic. It's also another tactic that we call alternative questions. The idea is to limit the suspect's degree of choices. So you notice being innocent wasn't one of those choices in that example. It was agreed to have committed the crime for this reason, which sounds awful, you're a monster, or agreed to this more excusable version of the crime, that it was an accident. That agreeing to the more minimized version of the crime leads people to think that they'll be treated more leniently for confessing. So it's that alternative question where this suspect is provided with two options, one sounding more excusable than the other. And the idea of providing excuse as we're having committed the crime as part of minimization.
How many times did you and your team document minimizing tactics being used against Kelsie Thomas in the 3-hour interview?
We found 65 instances.
And in terms of Chloe's injuries, the defense called their own expert, Dr. Thomas Young, who disagreed with the state's medical examiner.
Based on your review, were you able to come to an opinion on the cause of death of Cloe Chandler to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
And just generally speaking, doctor, what is your opinion, and we'll get into the specifics as you go along.
Okay, my opinion has to do with what was witnessed, not only by the mother of the child, but also by others who participated in the attempt to resuscitate the child. Looking at those statements and looking at the findings from the autopsy and other physical evidence related to the case, it's my opinion that the witness accounts, particularly the initial ones, are consistent with the autopsy findings and that there are no inconsistencies. As such, were I to offer an opinion as to cause of death, the cause of death would be hanging. Having a finding of these kinds of hemorrhages that she's described would not be unexpected. However, what is interesting here is that the kinds of hemorrhages that are usually noted in strangulation cases are absent in this case. What frequently happens is that strangulation cases are often associated with head injury, because usually when there's a strangulation going on, there may be some trauma from blunt force trauma to the head that goes on. There's no evidence of that at all in Chloe.
Are child strangulation cases rare?
Exceedingly rare. I've never seen a case of one.
And why are they rare?
In a situation where you have a small child, particularly even a real small child, the head is larger in proportion to the neck, and so it would be a lot easier, a lot more ergonomic, to just basically to be able to smother the child than it would be to strangle him.
All right, so not so simple, not so straightforward. Different perspectives, different theories, different evidence, different arguments, and obviously there was more evidence presented by both sides, but this was a good snapshot of the trial. And when the case was eventually handed off to the jury, they deliberated for 3 days. But look what happened.
As to count one, is the jury able to reach a unanimous verdict?
No, we're not.
Would further deliberation be fruitless?
Yes, it would be.
Yeah, so the jury actually acquitted Kelsie Thomas of child endangerment, but they were hung on that murder charge. They could not come to a decision on guilt or not guilty. But then you fast forward several months later and there's a retrial. The difference is this time the defense opted for a bench trial, meaning this would go in front of a judge. Sometimes you do that because you feel that a judge has a better grasp of the law, the particularities of the law, than a jury would have. There's some advantages to going in front of a judge versus a jury. Sometimes the jury can be inflamed by passions, there's more people. And this was in front of Judge Lucy Gaiman. Now, I will tell you, in this trial, the judge did believe that Thomas killed her daughter, that she used the pajamas to strangle Chloe to death. But she decided that prosecutors did not meet their burden to prove murder, that there was no malice here, there was no intent to kill, there was no premeditation. So what did she do? She convicted Miss Thomas of involuntary manslaughter, that this was an act of recklessness, an act done in a fit of anger and frustration. Part of her ruling says, quote, Kelsie's explanation of how she killed her daughter provides the only reasonable explanation of her daughter's death. This is what she wrote in her ruling. Kelsie's description matches both the medical evidence from the autopsy and physical evidence found at the scene. No one would know better than Kelsie how death occurred. And in the end, Kelsie Thomas was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but with credit for time served, she was released early after only serving a fraction of her sentence. This was based on Iowa's sentencing guidelines, so she's free to go. Now, I will say this, for those of you who agree with this, for those of you who do not agree with this, I always say this, but even with a verdict in many cases, and I believe especially in Kelsie Thomas's case, people will continue to debate what actually happened to 5-year-old Cloe. That's clear. But the one thing that we can all agree on, this should never have happened. That's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. Speak to you next time.